the thing that jumped out at me and Doug, my husband, as you know him, we were chatting this over this morning, was because it's so odd that he shot himself in the heart with a long gun. And now that you see the note saying he thought he had CTE and begging for them to study his brain, it makes a bit more sense that he would shoot himself in the chest instead of in the head, potentially. But this was obviously a mentally unwell man. There's nothing coming out this morning about connections to terror or radicalization or anything like that. You're the expert. What do you think?
Well, he's a crazy person, and trying to understand his mindset and motivations is going to be complicated, and I think will be debated even by people who study this kind of mass shooting for a living. What I did was ideologically based terrorism, and I worked in the NYPD intelligence division, and it was essentially jihadist terrorism. That was 99% of what the workload was. But we would look at mass shooting scenarios around the world, study them. And in fact, Jessica Tisch, who's now the commissioner of the NYPD, this was now 15 years ago, but she was a rising star in the counterterrorism division, which did assessments to protect buildings like this one at the time. And I knew Jesse when I was at the NYPD on the intel division side working against jihadism. So this is something that you can prepare for at some level in terms of security precautions, but there's never going to be a perfect security cordon that you can have here. This also, by the way, hits home, Megyn. I know you know this area well. I know this area well. I had a family member who walked across this plaza 10 minutes before the shooting happened. So last night I was at dinner and I was getting text messages about this, and I realized where it was. I know people who work at Blackstone. In fact, one of my cousin's husbands works in that building on that floor, and it was quite one of those times when you have to sit there and think, oh my God, and I had to go through and make sure that everybody that I knew was accounted for. So I know this area very well. I know people who work in that building and even on the Blackstone floors, I should say, not on the NFL floors. As for the shooter himself, I think that you'll find more about him in those incidents, likely the mental health incidents that you noted. The fact that this guy, I would be curious to know how he was able to transport this long gun, which the New York Post was reporting as an M4. So I'm assuming it's a civilian version of the M4. The military version would be fully automatic. I'd be curious to know how he was able to get around with this as clearly a mentally disturbed person without anybody noticing. Now, it's possible, but in New York City, AR-15s, for example, are all illegal. It's not like you could walk around. If I was loading this into my car, I have an AR-15. I have a couple of them. If I was loading one into my car in Florida, totally legal, right? As long as I have a legitimate purpose for it. This guy, what he's carrying around, that alone would get him sent to prison for years. So I'm just saying he might have been planning this out with some degree of caution because, at least until he strolled, as you pointed out, into the building. I think we'll find out more in these mental health incidents, though, that this is somebody who should have been flagged. I think there'll be more discussion about what could have been done to perhaps involuntarily commit him. I mean, this is the kind of person that should have been historically and Trump is on this, and Trump just signed an executive order about this, and we need to really think more about this. And the people in New York City, my wife was I was just in New York, Megyn, visiting my family day before this happened for my dad's birthday, and my wife was on the subway. And there was a stampede into her subway car because in the subway car next to her, there was some complete maniac with no shirt on who smelled like he hadn't bathed in, a couple of years, screaming at everybody. We actually have to take action and take dangerous, mentally unstable people out of circulation in broader society, get them help. No one's saying be inhumane, get them. But you can't allow things like this to happen because the ACLU wants to bring down the pillars of civilization and see what happens. I mean, we have to be able to do things about those who are dangerously mentally ill, like this individual who now took a number of lives.
They're so worried, the ACLU, about the civil liberties of shooters like this, and not at all about the civil liberties of his victims, of the right of the rest of us to live, a peaceful life without having to worry about getting shot in the lobbies of our building. I mean, involuntary commitment is the bare minimum we should be doing. Yet this won't start that conversation, Buck. You know it as well as I do. We're going to go back to, and it's fine. We should talk about why this guy still didn't have his firearms taken away from him after, if he really did have two mental health incidents with authorities, to the point where it was documented and our cops have already uncovered them. We should have that discussion in this, but they never cover anything on the left other than guns, gun violence.
Well, and as we know, because the shooter is not a white male, this is going to be and has been treated very differently. I know everyone's pointed out what was said on CNN, which
twice
was quite. Yeah, twice, which is quite a moment for CNN to say possibly a white male. We all understand that in the world of the Democrat on TV or just the left-wing mindset, it's much more of a story if it's a white guy who's doing the mass killing, because then you can attach it to Trump more easily, or maybe you can attach it. We all know the routine, and it's pathetic and it's gross, and it's why those pre-established media outlets have completely destroyed their credibility and are in a free fall that's not going to stop. So I don't think there's really a need to spend too much time on that aspect of it. But I do think that the fact that this guy is a minority, I saw it reported that they think he's half black, half Japanese. I'm not sure if that's true, but it's clearly not a white guy.
Well, he was born in Hawaii.
It's not. Yeah. Okay. Born. So, I mean, whatever the case may be, he's not some white guy. And so therefore, it's not an opportunity to, in bad faith, manufacture a MAGA connection and make it somehow about that, even though there's no real basis for it. We know that that's what they do all the time. In this case, they'll try to make it about guns, I think. But the problem that we keep running into is that I think, Megyn, if you were a serious person if someone was seriously trying to deal with whether it's crime or even mass shootings, but there are steps they would take. And in the mass shooting context, looking at the mental health component of this, which means involuntary commitment. I mean, it means that when you've had a few incidents where people are scared to be around you, and it's clear that, this guy thought he was in the NFL. He was never in the NFL. He's nuts, okay? He's nuts. And now, obviously, he's gone. But the fact that it would be almost impossible by the laws of really every state, almost impossible to put him on an involuntary psychiatric hold where you could really establish what kind of a risk is he to the public. Should we really take away any access that he has to firearms? This kind of a problem, if you're not going to address what could be addressable, you're going to repeat the scenario. And I think that's likely, unfortunately, to be the case with this, where you have somebody who they're going to do everything they can to find some way to make this about politics in the media that they favor, right? Whatever it may be. They'll attack the disfavored group, in this case, gun owners, and they won't deal with the reality, which is this guy's an absolute wacko and should have been flagged and stopped in advance of this. I mean, the other side of Megyn is, you can't, we're a country of 350 million people, give or take, and there are some very bad, very crazy people out there. You're not going to be able to stop all of them. It's unfortunate here. There was a good guy with a gun, so to speak. There was an NYPD officer on the scene, but first of all, he's outgunned. He's going to have his sidearm, or rather his pistol, against somebody who's got a long gun like this. That's going to be very tough. And he was shot in the back. He probably didn't even have a chance to react to the unfolding threat. And even obviously, if he had a ballistic vest on, not enough to stop the .556 round that was shot out of this rifle. So it's a very tough situation when someone who is a dedicated shooter like this, who has access to that firearm and doesn't care about living, right? I mean, that's the other part of this. So that's very tough to neutralize this threat in advance of any casualties. The only other thing is this could have been, unfortunately, I mean, you always hate saying this, this could have been much worse. This guy, fortunately, didn't keep going on this rampage, because it's not like they were able to get ESU, which is the New York version of SWAT, there to stop him in time before he could do any of this. So in a sense, because he's so crazy, he killed himself, and that, I think, probably spared a number of lives. I also know there's the photos of people barricading their offices. I mean, think about the trauma of that too. There's an active shooter on your office floor, and you're just trying to take the sofa and the chair and wedge it against the door.
I know that those were reportedly Blackstone employees, and those guys must have been in a full panic, hearing gunshots or maybe having gotten a call to tell them that there was an active shooter in the building. And what can you do? It's like,
Well, what they did is the right move, by the way. I mean, I just credit
totally.
to them,
But
right,
I
Megyn? On the
imagine that
spot,
this is
yeah.
going to lead to even more security provisions in some New York City buildings, especially those that have high target profiles, like a Blackstone, like an NFL. I mean, I actually did work right across the street from this for 3 years when I was at Jones Day. I was at 53rd and Lex for 3 years of my life. It's a relatively quiet area of New York. I mean, it's Midtown, but it's not like the hop in Times Square, which is just a few blocks to the west. And it's clear that this was targeted. I mean, we don't know for sure that he was going to the NFL, but if you just wanted to unleash carnage, you'd go to Times Square, which is just a few blocks west. As I said, you wouldn't go into this particular building. This guy seemed to have a mission. It's not like I listed the states he had driven through. He appears to have gotten into New York City, driven right to this building, just left his car and walked right in. The only way for a cop like this one to protect a building like that would have been for him to be on guard at the door. And you and I both know, Buck, these guys they're generally as a deterrent and to like intervene once something has happened. They're not really like a military guy standing at the door to prevent armed intruders like this guy.
I mean, I'm just a civilian who goes to the range regularly, Megyn, and I shoot a lot more than 95% of people in the NYPD. And I was in the NYPD and went shooting with them, just to be clear. Like, I know it's a budgetary thing. They don't get, they're not, I mentioned ESU, that's Emergency Services Unit. Think SWAT. It's the same thing essentially, but they're called ESU in the NYPD. Those guys shoot a lot. Those guys are tactical. They can handle a threat like this. They're trained to handle a threat like this. A beat cop essentially on his own, when somebody's ambushing him and got a long gun. I mean, this is just, they're just human beings trying to do a job on their end. I mean, they're not Supermen. They're not able to necessarily engage and neutralize a threat of that magnitude. And this is now going to have, I think there'll be more discussion about what about having armed security personnel in more lobbies. Well, there was an NYPD cop on duty here. I mean, you had a guy show up with a semi-automatic rifle who wanted to kill a lot of people, and that's a major threat to tackle for anybody, no matter what your level of training is. And so, yeah, on the NYPD side, I just think that this is one of those times where it was a terrible scenario, that there aren't going to be that many lessons learned in terms of response, in terms of protective procedures. Essentially,
I am kind of surprised. I don't know what the layout was on the floors, but in most buildings in New York now, you go up to the individual floor, and now you have to get through another layer of security where there will be glass, and in some cases bulletproof glass, and you don't get to even see a receptionist unless you can get yourself through the glass. I can't imagine they would not have that at a place like Blackstone. He didn't go to that floor. He went to the floor of the management company. That's what the cops said, where I imagine the security probably would have been lesser. So, yeah,
it's all about
there's
layers.
room for improvement, but we've chosen not to live like this in general in America. Since President Trump was sworn in, his administration has made enormous progress at a breakneck pace. But don't forget, while they are moving mountains for the good of the nation, you've got your personal savings to worry about. And one of the best ways to look after your savings is through diversification, particularly with gold, like from Birch Gold Group. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. And Birch was an advertiser on this show 12 months ago. If you had purchased then, you'd be 40% richer today. Now's the time. Central banks continue to bolster demand for gold by burying in record quantities. Global instability and tension is high, and Birch Gold makes owning physical gold so easy. Easily convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold, or buy some to store in your home safe. Just text MK to the number 989898, and Birch Gold is going to send you a free info kit on gold. Look into it, see if it's right for you. There's no obligation, just useful information to help you make a decision. With an A+ rating, with a Better Business Bureau, and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of your savings today. Text MK to 989898. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.